Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast, where our goal is simple: to learn from the best and discover how we can all live a better life, build a more fruitful business, and be more productive. Join us each week as we interview fellow entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and leading experts to discuss everything from marketing secrets to new technology and life as an entrepreneur.
Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Sonnenberg, and I'm here with my intro co-host, Ike Fontaine. Hey, Ike.
Good day, good day.
So what did you think of this? This episode was a special one with Jay Abraham. What did you think of it?
Jay is probably one of the most well-versed men in words I have ever listened to. His vocabulary is honestly just breathtaking.
Yeah. I mean, if you're like, when you're listening to this episode, you should have a thesaurus open next to you while you're listening to it, because the guy's vocabulary is just insane.
It just makes you feel like you're inadequate in speaking your own language.
Not only that, you probably the concepts that he speaks about, it's so dense and so rich. Sometimes I find when I meet with him in person and we're out to say dinner, I record the conversations and I have to re-listen to it multiple times. So like, you'll probably, if you're listening to this, you'll probably have to listen. If you want to get the most out of it, I would suggest be prepared. You'll probably have to listen to this episode at least twice, just because there's nuances of what Jay says that are profound.
It's Jay Abraham. He's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. And if you don't know who Jay Abraham is, they call him the $21 billion man. He's one of the highest paid consultants. He's a marketing legend. He's a business consultant. His fee is upwards of $100K to work with him. He's the mentor of people that you may have heard of, like Damon John from Shark Tank, Dave Asprey from Bulletproof, among others. He's a mentor, a client of Leverage. He's also an advisor of Leverage. I don't know if you knew that, Ike, but he is now our newest advisor.
Well, no wonder we're doing so well.
But he is just honestly such an interesting, awesome guy. He's so generous. He's always been really helpful. And what you can get out of him in just a few hours, you probably couldn't figure out for yourself in a few years. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, just on the point of, you say that, oh, he's dense and you might have to re-listen to it, et cetera, et cetera. But the big point that I got from this episode is that this is a man who's worked so deeply in like 1,000 different industries and multiple continents, and the amount of context, the amount of reference that he can draw from at looking at a specific problem, it perhaps, I would say in Jay's words, is monumentally vast.
Right. And also, the questions and the discussion that we had on this episode that you're about to listen to is really different than probably any other interview that you've heard. So I hope that you enjoy that, because I purposely was trying to throw him some questions that he never heard, because I want it to be interesting for the listeners on the show as well. And knowing him, I was able to kind of go a bit deeper and ask some interesting questions that I think that you'll find interesting. Ike and I just got back. We had a Bullseye event. So Bullseye is the business efficiency and effectiveness workshop that I throw. And then we did a team retreat afterwards. How are you feeling, Ike? We just got back from Austin.
Little sore, man. Little sore.
Mentally sore?
Yeah, mentally. Yeah. Yeah. It was good. I mean, we don't, as a remote team, we don't get to all see each other, physically. So when we do, we tend to.
I mean, we're going to have to run this episode through HR. This is not sounding good right now.
We tend to, when we get together, we tend to lock ourselves in like a hotel room for 48 hours and restructure parts of the company that we feel can be better.
I mean, I really was proud of the team, because on the day that the team retreat started, I had to run my private mastermind group for that half day. And it was just amazing to come in on Saturday and see what basically you guys restructured the whole company by yourselves, org chart, role and responsibilities, job descriptions, without me even being there. And Saturday, it was just such an awesome feeling to walk in. you guys already did all the legwork, and then I was just there to kind of cheerlead and fill in the gaps. So that was,
in credit to you as the CEO, you gave us a space to do it. I don't think there's many CEOs or leaders who are very willing to do things like that.
well, maybe I'm just lazy and just want other people to do. No, I'm just joking.
Maybe
I
you're
think
just
like
efficient.
it's taken a long time to get the team to the quality that it's at. And also, Jay, who you're about to be listening to, came to our very first Bullseye event last year in Park City, and I think he's indicated that he might be coming to the one June 1st and 2nd in Park City. It's not 100% confirmed, but I have a hunch. So anyways, if you're listening and you're interested, you could shoot me an email, nick@getleverage.com, or go to bullseyemastermind.com for more info there. Ike, anything else we're missing here? I mean, I want to kind of shut up and let people just listen to Jay, because that's
It's getting good. They're getting close. About 20 more seconds. I have to say, Jay Abraham, he went to the first Bullseye. He was amazing. First time I saw him speak, and unbelievably blew me away. What a treat. So I hope that he's coming. That'll be such a blast.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the show, Jay.
Thank you, Nick. And I am flattered to be invited and eager to contribute.
You have played an extremely influential role in my entrepreneurial career, and I feel blessed to be able to call you a friend and a mentor. So I just want to start off by saying that.
Well, thank you very much. It's very gratifying.
I want to spend this short period of time we have together asking questions that maybe other people haven't asked before and getting different perspectives, because I was thinking, you know, you get interviewed so many times, you're the keynote at so many places, and so many people are asking you the same questions. It must be fairly, I wouldn't say boring, but I thought it might be more interesting for you as well if we talk about some other things that maybe isn't, you know, tell me about your background and
yeah, sure.
So, so if that's all right with you, I put together a handful of questions that I was curious, and I think that the listeners might be curious.
Okay, go for it.
So in no particular order, I've put together a list, but first let me ask you, how is your Velociraptor doing?
I no longer have it. It gave its life to a client of mine. My wife never liked it. I got it on an impulse, and every time she went in our backyard, she would castigate me for getting it. And so after being admonished over and over and over again, it gave its life to somebody for something else. Now, I got an exotic car out of it, so it was okay.
Okay.
but yeah, it had a short-lived life. I liked it, and all my friends liked it, but my wife hated it. So it no longer resides with me. Now it lives in somebody's backyard outside of Dallas.
Ah, all right. Well, I'm glad that he found a home. At least you still have the small one that we got you?
Yes.
All right.
I still do. Thank you for that. But I wish I had the large one. But it was fun while I had it.
Okay. So anyone listening right now, you're probably going to need to pause this conversation multiple times. So I'm just giving you that heads up. I've had the pleasure of working with and speaking with Jay many, many times over the years. And whenever I do sit with Jay, I do it with my phone out on record, and I tend to find myself listening to it about 6 times because there's little nuances that you guys will maybe not pick up on the first or second time. So I suggest listening to this conversation slowly with a thesaurus, because Jay does have quite the vocabulary, which leads me to my next question. How did you develop such a vocabulary?
It was very purposeful, and it was very difficult. When I was about 18, I think you know this, I got married the first time, and I had 2 kids by 20, and I was very uneducated. And I had been exposed to some people who impressed me monumentally with their precision communication. my voice is whistling. When they would talk, it was so clear, and they were able to personify and project beautiful imagery. And I wanted that, but I didn't possess that. And so what I did was I bought a thesaurus, and every day I would pick 3 or 4 words that I would use 20 times that day each in what I hoped was a appropriate conversation. And I did that every day for 5 or 6 years. And then after a while, my vocabulary got relatively extensive and expansive. And I would argue that I probably do people somewhat of a disservice because I have a love affair with very precise but sometimes complex words and phraseologies. But I love to be very precision focused as a communicator.
Well, that's very profound. And I think that that's probably something that everyone could benefit from, which is learning the art of language at a deeper level and being precise.
Yeah, well, I think that unfortunately, and I find myself guilty of what I'm about to say, and maybe you as well in our conversation, but there's a lot of default phrases we use that are just, I'll call them bridges, that just everyone it's like this, it's like that. And whenever I catch myself doing it, and I perhaps will do it on this conversation, I intellectually admonish myself because I don't want to be a shortcutter. I don't want to express something so abstractly with the expectation that you grasp what I'm saying when I know deep down you probably don't, because I'm experiencing something in my historic memory or my observational experience that you didn't live and you didn't encounter. And I'm saying like that, like you really get it. I'm very aware, maybe over aware of, let's call it true reality, and how flawed most people's thinking is about how the other side either doesn't or misperceives or comprehends something.
Well, with when your content, and I recommend anyone listening should go to your site, abraham.com, pick out some of the free resources, a keynote, and watch it multiple times, because a lot of people, including myself, you end up going sometimes for quantity, and it's like, oh, I heard that talk or I read this book. But if someone just were to fully understand all the concepts that you talk about, even in just 1 or 2 talks, they would probably get more out of that than weeks worth of skimming through other content, wouldn't you say?
With all immodesty, I would say affirmative, but I have to tell you, I have a real challenge. Most of the people that try to help us be bigger and better on social media say cryptic, succinct, pithy, and I don't believe there's richness or deep meaning in that kind of abstraction. So I like, maybe you could call it old school. Pardon me. Maybe you could call it crock cooking over flash searing, but I like to go deep and meaningful. And you are exactly correct. I believe nuances are the real connection, the real catalytic factors that make communication really work.
So I'll share, I have a handful of questions, but just to share a few things that I've learned from previous conversations, because I've re-listened to all the conversations that we've recorded together. So,
wow.
So a couple of profound things that I gathered just from, and I didn't get all these things. This is why I'm saying you have to listen to these things on repeat. Listen to some of your previous talks or this podcast episode probably 2 or 3 times because you will for sure miss things. But when you were helping me prepare for that big pitch, which I did, some of the takeaways were talking about turning cost centers into profit centers. And we talked about that for maybe 2 seconds and moved on to the next thing. But I paused and I thought about it for, 30 minutes, just that 1-2 second snippet. And it was amazing where your mind can go when you really start trying to fully digest some of these concepts.
Yeah, I think that the tragedy in most people's lives is most people don't have a broad enough context of all the implications and the applications or possibilities that are available to them in any situation. I've been either blessed or cursed because I've done 1,000 industries on 5 or more continents, and I have a context of reference of all kinds of different ways you can capitalize on time, effort, opportunity, interaction, capital, intellectual capital, communication, access. And when you see how much more is possible from everything, including a moment of interaction, you revere it more, you cherish it enough to express it more powerfully, I think.
Definitely. Can I share with you just 2 other concepts that I've gathered from the re-listening, and then we'll go into some questions. So another thing, I was on your podcast earlier last year, and one of the things that I got out of the re-listen to that episode was you said, it's one thing to save time, but it's equally important to consider where you reinvest that saved time. Which
I don't even remember that, but that is a very profound insight. Most people don't understand it. I mean, you know this because you deal in this for your clients and yourself. But if you look at any spectrum of population, nobody has more than 24/7. Some people have a little higher IQ, and God bless them, but that's really not the denominator. The biggest really differentiators are going to be time, opportunity cost, and how you use them, isn't it?
Time is all you got.
Yeah, and most people, but if you look at what most people think they're overwhelmed, if you chronicle how not just inefficient, but how low yielding the allocation of time is. Somebody said to me, Nick, once, and it's sort of interesting, that we're all hedge fund investors with a portfolio, which is really the allocation of time, opportunity cost, capital, intellectual capital, and most people don't have a clue what the yield is and the risk and what they're doing, because if they did, they wouldn't do it. If you have 18 things that you're allocating here, and most of them have a 40% risk and a 2% yield, and a couple of them have a 40% risk and a 40% yield and a 2% risk, but you're allocating the same amount of whatever opportunity cost, that makes no sense.
So what you're describing now, because I come from, my background's in financial engineering. So what you're describing there is what we call in finance the Sharpe Ratio, which is your return adjusted for risk. And a lot of people don't think about that. But when I was a high frequency trader, I could make $10 million trading for the company. My bonus could be all over the place, because it's not just about how much you make. What risk did you incur? What did the path look like to get to that 10 million? Were you taking massive amounts of risks and you could have potentially lost 100 million? Or did you make 100K every day, basically, for a period of time? And I'm looking at this at leverage as well. When people talk to me about, oh, my revenue doubled, it's not just about the doubling, it's the path that got you there. Was it a smooth curve up, or was it a jagged, highly volatile path to get there? And looking at return adjusted for risk tells you a lot of interesting information that people don't really think about.
Well, I'll tell you something very interesting. I'm just writing this down because I love this, the way you've expressed it.
Like, you could go to Vegas, put $1 million on black, and you could win. Are you going to be a genius because you won $1 million and had a huge return? No. You took a massive amount of risk and you have a low Sharpe ratio. So
I love that. I was on the phone yesterday with a client in Australia. Very successful guy. He owns a really high performing chain of uh, of of fashion for younger people. And he was telling me about this big investment he was making in a local, it's not a concert, it's like a Coachella thing. And I asked him what his return was going to be. And if everything works, he's into it $1 million and he will make $1 million. And upon exploration of it, he's trying to raise money for his business, and he's got a bunch of potential investors. And I made the point that that's a static, it's a very, very non-strategic utilization of opportunity costs, whereas that $1 million deployed back in his business, when if he sells it, he can get not a trail, what do you call it, forward for maybe 18 months more. It might be worth $20 million extra dollars to him, and he never thought of that.
Totally. You know, I know that a big thing that you talk about is taking things from different industries and concepts and applying it in a parallel fashion to other industries that maybe didn't think about those concepts. We should really sit down and I talk a little bit about finance to you, because things like the Sharpe Ratio, risk, return adjusted for risk, or things like Kelly criterion, which are optimal betting strategies. I'm sure that there's a lot of these concepts that if you just look at it from a different vantage point could be applied.
Yeah, I'd love that. That would be really useful, because I probably deal in relative equivalence. We're doing, for example, a new spin, pardon me, on strategic alliances, power partnering, and we're calling it the Unlimited Business Checkbook. But I did an articulation of it a couple of days ago, and I called it capital equivalence, because it gets you the same thing as if you had money. And there's so many, but yeah, you probably would give me really an electrified rethinking on a lot of the things that I probably do, just matter of fact, that have more science and also more sophisticated nomenclature to it.
Yeah, I think that you already have figured out probably you're already saying this return adjusted for risk stuff just in a different way. So I could just tell you, a few other ways to explain it from a finance. But anyways, now we're going on a tangent.
That's very interesting. No, it's to me, it's fascinating. It may not be to the viewer, but geez, it's fascinating to me. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Another place that I've been getting inspiration is chess books. And I have a few chess books. And just looking at the chapters of these chess books have been really interesting for copywriting purposes. Like there's a book called Chess for Zebras. If you look it up and you just look at the chapters, I think you'd really like it. Like one of the chapters was plan with pencil, play with pen, right? Think about all the different articles that you could write just on that concept. So
I'll tell you something, and I can't remember whoever, one of the great chess masters who's now retired, but he's still alive. He was a keynote for one of my friends at a very big business conference. And the friend was telling me that it captivated people because he was analogizing how chess strategy applies so much to entrepreneurship. And most people don't think of the correlation.
It's probably Kasparov.
I think it is, yes.
Yeah.
And he said he just captivated. Most people go, whoa, chess, I don't want a chess person. But he said he was so impactful when he made that connection and correlation.
Yeah. I think it's very powerful what you talk about with looking outside other industries, maybe hobbies like chess, or other places, and applying those principles and concepts and just new ways of thinking to whatever your current problem is that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Well, I think that what I try to tell everybody that I ever reach or work with is that the more you travel outside of your and your competitor's comfort zone, the more power you possess, the more optionality you have, the more ability you have to really outthink, out strategize, out market, outperform, out leverage, in your phraseology, anybody else. But if all you know is what everybody else knows, and all you do is plus or minus 20% better or worse than everybody else, you are limited in a very real way to a very linear progression at best.
Totally. Well, this is a good transition to my next question because you've used the word linear. I know one of the new concepts that you're speaking about now is beyond exponential. Do you mind to just share a bit about what that means?
Yeah, well, and I really first introduced it at your thing, and it was resonated, and I've talked about it.
He's talking about the Bullseye event.
Yes,
you were kind to come
excuse
to.
me. Yeah, but I've introduced it about 5 other times. I did a keynote, I did a discussion, I've integrated it. It's always resonated, and ironically, I come up with all these concepts, and I get all excited, and then I get on tangents, and I haven't done a lot with it. So it's good that you asked me to refresh it. So the concept is pretty simple. Over my career, I have introduced over 30 categories, not just techniques, but full-on categories, each one of which singularly and separately can produce exponential growth, certainly in the bottom line and often in the top. But I'm more interested, frankly, in bottom line than I am top. Everyone wants all this revenue. I'm much more interested in all this profit if it's sustainable. But I always ask myself, well, if I've got 30 or 35 different categories and each separate one can produce geometric growth, what's geometry on geometry on geometry? And I stupidly just asked the question, but never really researched or looked up the answer. And one day I thought, well, that's dumb. Let me look it up, and said, is there anything beyond exponentiality? And Google comes up and says, yes, mathematically, it's quite proven there are 5 gradients above exponentiality: heptation, hexation, octation. I can't remember the other 2, but I realized that if it is mathematically acknowledged that you can go 5 levels beyond exponential, and it's just off the chart, and there are all these transactional impact factors, leverage points in commerce, in business, in revenue systems. Why in the world, if it is easily or reasonably possible to execute every one of them in an exponential way, would you possibly want to execute it in an incremental way when same time, same effort or less, same risk or less, same access or less, same capital or less, same interaction or less, can produce many times the outcome now, and residually even more potentially later? When you have that potential, why would you want to limit yourself? The only answer is you don't know any better.
Right.
Can't be that you want to be linear. Why would you want to be? Can't be that you want to be static. But most people don't really examine, evaluate, question that.
It's probably because people think more in tactics than strategy.
I would say that people, whether it's career, whether it's life, whether it's relationships, whether it's entrepreneurs, they tend to default, unless they're very, very significant and sophisticated, to a tactical mode of conducting whatever you want to answer: their business, their life, their career, their relationship, their love life, their parenting, their finances, everything.
Yeah. And you could apply that concept. Everyone, you're familiar with the 80-20 principle?
Sure.
So you could apply the same thinking. Why shoot for 80-20? What if you do another 80-20 on 80-20 and you try to go for 96-4, or you do another iteration on that?
No, you're right. I mean, the most powerful thing in the world is the math doesn't lie.
Yeah. Well, that's
most people don't really look at it. I mean, if you do it correctly, it doesn't. But when I demonstrate the simplicity of a 3-way to grow business model, or Power Parthenon, or we got 9 drivers, we got sticking point solutions, we got, I got a new one I've just come up with. I'm sorry, they're doing some work next door, so it's noisy. I just came up with a new one the other day, and it's called sunk cost marketing. There's all these things it's sunk cost and all kinds of things that we accept a short term or a one-time yield out of, and we just write it off mentally. We don't think about it. And the biggest example is probably lead generating. People will generate leads or opt-ins or prospects, and they'll accept a default percentage of conversion, utilization, monetization, when in fact the majority of effort, time, expense has been sunk into the people that don't monetize or don't do anything. Right. If you can figure out how to really get a lot more utility value out of those, it dramatically changes everything.
Well, and you wrote a book on this called Getting All You Can Out of All You Got. And a lot of people,
yes,
I like to think of it, and I'm able to say this now because I learned the hard way and had a broken business that I had to fix. But a lot of people have a broken pipe with water overflowing, and they're just trying to mop faster rather than trying to figure out how to fix the pipe in the first place. And
great graphic imagery. Yeah, no, I agree with you. But one of the things that I have come to believe about most people is that they don't do that intentionally or purposely. So there's no shame in them being, ignorance probably isn't the right word. Oblivious isn't, let's say, unaware. I think there's tremendous shame in being aware and continuing to do that.
Right. One thing along these lines with getting all you can out of all you got, and your point with the leads, we made the same mistake at Leverage about 2.5 years ago when I took over and bought my ex-partner out. We were celebrating revenue growth because every month we were growing at 10%. And it's like, well, that sounds
that's
great.
Very impressive. Yeah.
But when you look at the breakdown of how that happened, it was 20% new clients in and 10% new clients out. So it was good marketing masking a crap product. And it wasn't sustainable because it relied heavily on being able to continue getting that marketing pipeline. And then when when everything hit the fan and we had no more leads coming in, we were just left with, a broken, a broken company. And then what I realized, what I learned there, which I think is congruent with what you talk about, is I broke down what were all the different drivers of the business. And I broke it down into attraction, conversion, and retention. And we were so heavily focused going left to right on attracting new leads. And that was really the main focus. And we weren't spending enough energy on optimizing conversion of what we already had in the pipeline. And we were spending almost no time on optimizing retention. So we spent all this effort getting things in, and then we were not getting even 1% of the value of each of these people. So I stopped marketing and sales completely, and we focused first on fixing retention. I stopped it for 2 years. That was how extreme I went on it.
Wow.
And we still stopped marketing to this day, pretty much. We've now started going to the C and optimizing conversion and getting all we can out of the current pipeline and leads and asking for referrals and holding on. It's much easier to hold on to a client than it is to get a new one. And probably sometime we will start marketing again. But it's been a 2.5-year process to get back.
But you just hit implicitly, not explicitly, on probably the biggest, I don't know if I want to call it a mistake, misfiring, but the biggest lesson that anybody in any enterprise or any P&L responsible role could learn, and it's a variation of a quote that I use all the time from Socrates. Socrates said, "A life unexamined is a life not worth living." It's a paraphrase. And I believe that a business that isn't constantly examined and re-examined isn't worth owning. But that declaratory statement sounds very cool. Most people don't have a clue what the denominators, what the factors to examine, what the implications, the correlations, what anomalies mean. So being able to look at it is useless if you don't look at the right factors. Looking at it, even the right factors, and not knowing what it's telling you to do more of, less of, change the mix, it's a Pyrrhic victory. It's sort of interesting.
Totally. No, you have to constantly re-examine and optimize, and just have a student mindset, and always be looking for what worked, a month ago might not be the best way of doing it today.
It's exactly right. But most people, or something that's very profitable and you're content with that, may be so underperforming what you could be generating from the opportunity, the media, the access, the buyer, the anything.
Yep.
So it's and I've been very blessed. I'm not that bright, but I've been exposed to people so much brighter than I, that just through osmosis, some modicum of their intelligence strips off.
I would say that that's inaccurate. You are one of the most unique, bright people, and I'm not just saying this because we're friends and trying to blow smoke up your butt, but you in a world where there's a lot of coaches and advisors and gurus, you deserve the accolades and the status that you've built for yourself, because you really are in a status of your own.
You're very great.
I respect what you do, because a lot of people become just professional speakers and showmen, and they've gone through some theatrical schools and they can give an inspiring talk. But my first time watching you was at a Tony Robbins event, where you had people, must have been hundreds of people, line up and do a rapid fire 1-minute question to you. And I at that point hadn't heard of you. Joe Polish put us in touch, and that's where we first connected. But it was just amazing. I was like, this is like an improv comedian, but like watching like the world's best improv, because you were just able to on point 100 in a row, all different industries, all different questions. And I thought that displayed mastery much more than what most people do, which is memorize a talk and motivate people.
Well, and thank you. I'm very proud and a little bit fascinated by that side of my being, because I go into a bit of a zone trance. But the one thing I was going to say was, and this is something I'm also proud of, we put every keynote I ever do out to the public. And that's because we never do the same keynote. Most of our contemporaries, the people and it's not a criticism of them, it's a clinical assessment. They had a career that at one point they were doing things transactionally, and then they became theoretical, and they basically took whatever that body of achievement or knowledge or skill or field of endeavor, and they used it for whatever their keynote is, and they somewhat dissociated from really day to day and became more entertainers or presenters or thespians. And I've been very blessed. I've preferred, it's not as lucrative, I prefer working on the front lines of capitalism with a constantly diverse and disparate array of different kinds of entrepreneurs. So I can talk about just about anything, and I do all the time. So it's fun.
Well, you've inspired me to a large degree, because now when I have to give talks, rather than memorizing a talk or doing some inspirational, I always try to get them to just make it a Q&A where people could throw at me any process that's inefficient or that they wanted to talk about, and on the spot trying to optimize someone's process. Because for me,
and that's got much more value. Because yeah, well, I mean, what I learned is, and this, inspiration, motivation is a very rapidly diminishing bromide. It gets you amped for some period of time, and it dissipates very quickly. But specifics that relate to your life or your business or your career or your health or your marriage or your children or your finances have a much more sustaining and deeply penetrating impact on people.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's good.
Right.
I'm pleased you do that because you have the ability to make big differences when you do that to people. That's great.
And it makes it more interesting. I like being thrown a weird process or a weird problem and trying to figure out. Like I just had a vet hospital. They were getting a lot of phone calls from, they're in California, getting a lot of calls from out of state. It's a waste of time for the front desk because they can't service people legally out of state. So, they pose this problem, and then on the fly, it's like, well, why don't we remove the phone number from the website and we put a chat bot with a decision tree on the site that asks various qualifying questions, and only if they're qualified, the bot will show the phone number.
It's
very
brilliant.
simple, very elegant, and it saved them, I don't know, maybe 5 hours a week at the front desk.
That's it. But people don't realize what that means over a year or over, whatever number of people man the front desk. I mean, it's a singular concept, but it might be 5 people doing it. So, but you hit on something else, which is, I think, I like to really, I guess I'd call it really microscope in on certain phrases that are throwaways. You talked about the word elegant. Elegant solutions are one of the most profound and yet unrecognized or diminished in value. The ability to take a complex issue and distill it down to an elegant, simple solution that is so logical, so immediate, usually produces such a big shift is a real gift. And most people go, oh, elegant, so what? I did something a while back. Dave Asprey had a book called Game Changers. And it was very nice because he had me interview him for his podcast. So it was cool. And I looked up the word game changer because most people, it's been used so much and banded around, it has almost no value. But if you look at the real definition and meaning, it's quite profound. A lot of the words that we use just almost as placeholders, and I would call them bridges that we don't even think about. If you slow down and explore what it was originally intended to mean, it's quite profound.
So what is a game changer?
Oh God, there's a list of it. I can send it to you and you can post it.
We'll share that.
I can't remember them all, but they're quite, they're really profound, significant activities, events, shifts that cause something really monumental to occur that flows from it, but something much bigger when you look at the way that it was originally intended to express. Now you go, it's a game changer. Okay, it's a game changer.
Right.
Doesn't mean much, does it?
No. I mean,
well, even you. I mean, when you say leverage, I don't think people understand. If you look up leverage, and you look up, and the concept of give me a lever big enough and I'll move the world or whatever it is. Leverage is it's a profound concept.
That's why we can name the company Leverage. It's minimal input for maximal output.
I know, but I think that most people don't really revere the implication of that word, what it means to them.
And what I always try to explain to people with leverage too is, how do you get as much leverage on your time? And a lot of the things that we do, it's not even on the what we do, but how you outsource something is equally important. Time isn't all worth the same in my mind. A minute of your time at 9 a.m. on a Monday is not worth the same at 10 p.m., on a Friday night after you're exhausted from the week, or a minute.
Brilliant insight.
So, if you're in the back of an Uber, a lot of that's just usually dead time. But what if you use the audio recorder on your phone to brain dump content while you're in the back of that? And you could spend 2 minutes brain dumping some content and send that to a writer that takes it and creates an ink article for you. That's pretty good leverage, no?
I agree. And if you're not, then you go the opposite way too. If you're not going to use the time in that kind of a constructive mode, how many better ways can you use the free time to really enjoy the moment or relax or connect with, with the world or society or yourself? But either of those are leverage.
Right. Totally. So let me get into a few questions that I've thought about that I wanted to ask you here. Do you think that over the years, with all of your deep experience, has it been that you would say you now know more of what to do, or is it more that you know what not to do?
That's a great question. I have been very self-disciplined to always focus on what's wrong with this picture as opposed to what's right. And that can be very emotionally and ego debilitating because I'm not always as diplomatic, and it's hurt me in a couple of my marriages as well because I always saw my role as to make things better. If you're going to make things better, it presupposes that there's something wrong. And wrong is not necessarily bad, but it means that it's inefficient, ineffective, unproductive. There's a hole in the dike, so to speak, and you don't know it, but it can be very painful. But I look at things and start by saying, okay, where is there transactional arbitrage? There's a gap. You're either doing it wrong, you're not doing it to fully, you're not seeing this connect, whatever it is.
But
it's what's wrong.
Over time, has it been more so that you're thinking about what to avoid, and earlier on in your career, it was more about what to do? Has there been a pattern?
Yeah. I think it's very insightful because I've been exposed to so many things people did. But we have a lot of these throwaway categories that I've told you about, and one of them is called the 12 strategy pillars. And this is going to sound so axiomatic, but it is not. One of the pillars in these 12 is making success a natural way of thinking. Now, that is so obvious, but if you look at what most people do, I should probably replace success to optimal, because most people don't do things that are logical. They don't do things that are successful. They only do things that are within this realm of their reference, their experience, or their logic. And their logic, it stems back to these things. All that's logical to me is all that I've seen or done or maybe read about or heard about at a seminar. It has nothing to do with what's real and what's possible and and alternative realities that I just haven't been exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
If that doesn't sound too esoteric.
That's great. Who in past or present has been a mentor to you?
Jesus.
How does Jay Abraham have a mentor?
Gosh. Who's been a mentor to me? Earlier in my life, the guy that started Icy Hot was a mentor to me. The guy that started Entrepreneur Magazine was a mentor to me. Dan Rosenthal, famous direct marketer, was a mentor to me. Posthumously, Claude Hopkins, Albert Lasker, Rosser Reeves were mentors to me when I was involved in variable thinking. The head of a big company called Qualpro, the largest multivariable testing organization, was a mentor to me. Let's see, a famous guy that is now dead, a direct marketing guy named David Geller, was a mentor to me. Stephen R. Covey was a mentor to me. Let's see. Right now, I confer with 2 or 3 people. One is the #1 guy in the world in Six Sigma. We're sort of reciprocal mentors in different reality There's a guy that it's the same thing, reciprocal. He is the former senior strategic advisor to Texas Pacific Group. I mean, I can go on and on. It's not one person.
So you did have some mentors.
You have tons of them, and I hope that I'll live long enough to have tons more. I think you don't have to have a mentor. Most people, and by the way, let me make a really cool distinction. And it may run afoul of what you believe, and I apologize for that. I believe there's three categories of influencers who can have profound positive impact and alter the fate, destiny, and the trajectory of somebody's career, life, health, finances, everything. One is a coach, and I think, frankly and respectfully, that's the lowest denomination, and I'll tell you why. Most coaches are taught and function to ask you and ascertain what your goal is, and then help you reverse engineer it. And that's fine.
And also there's no qualification to be a coach. Nowadays, you can go through a boot camp and like all of a sudden you're a coach that's never done anything with your life before.
That is exactly right. A mentor is at an elevated level. He or she is somebody who has a spectrum of real life empirical understanding of something. And when you give them a goal, as often as not, they will hold you to a higher standard of either performance, achievement, outcome, commitment, because they know how much more is possible from time, effort, opportunity, capital, etc. A level above that, in my opinion, is what I think I do and I like to do, and I call it masterful thinking partner. Somebody who has the context and the dimensionality and the implication understanding of possibility, of cause and effect, of probability, outcome, so much more that affects activities, decisions, effort, actions, that can give you a ton of perspective before, during, after you take action. And they understand not just the vertical implication, but all the other things that come with it. Emotionality, psychology, shifts, because when you grow from 5 million to 20 million, it's a very different thing. From 20 to 40, it's a very different thing. From being a junior manager to being a C-level executive, all those things are totally different.
Well, I know now to not call you my mentor anymore, but to call you a master thinking partner of mine.
You like that?
Yeah, it sounds way deeper and more valuable.
And thank you. I pride myself because I think I bring a depth of integrative understanding and perspective that it's very transcendent. It's not just about what you think superficially. It's sort of it's what's behind the wall, so to speak.
Yep. Oh, I love it. It's totally spot on with how I think about this stuff. And I do think that there's a lot of abundance of these coaches coming out of things, but you don't hear about master thinking partners. That's not as common.
Well, and you think about it, I mean, your life, your career, your business is not it's not static, and it's very rarely level, and it's not without enormous variation. Some is controllable, some isn't. But what is controllable is how you harness, harvest, maximize, or minimize all the implications that any kind of an activity, an event, a progression or a regression can produce. And most people don't have the wherewithal on their own to really know how to handle that. They really don't.
Mm-mm.
I say this very interestingly, and I use this. Let me think if I can remember how I said it before, because it's really wonderful. We are taught. I'm going to say it right. The deal is we're not really taught how to be entrepreneurs. We're not really taught. I mean, even the entrepreneurial schools, I've lectured in some of them, and they're most have been, maybe they're better now, very superficial. I mean, you're not taught how to handle all these things. You're not taught. I mean, and there's a book out, I can't remember what it's called, but it's all about how today, there's generalists, there's specialists, and then there's people that have all this integrated understanding. And the ones with this integrative understanding are the ones that have the better and the best ability to handle all the new, historically unprecedented elements that our world, our business, our competitive economy, our relationships, our attention span require.
I don't even know how you would teach it. I mean, for me, it's like, how do you teach adaptability, deep curiosity, high pain tolerance, resourcefulness? I mean, these to me are just things that you either have or you don't have that are really what you need to be an entrepreneur.
We did something one time, and this response is not disacknowledging, it's tracking with you. We did something one time just for a giggle, and I did a 13-week, very, very low price program, and we called it Doing Something Different. And every week, I would give entrepreneurs one assignment that was way out of their comfort zone to achieve what you're talking about. One day, it might be, okay, whatever your normal default protocol is, you get up, you go to the bathroom, you take a shower, you go down and have coffee, you read the paper, get dressed, get in the car or whatever, go down the highway, do it different. If you have to, go to the bathroom, definitely do that. But do something reverse. Don't do it in the order. Don't go down the highway. Go down the side streets. Pay attention. And then every week I would have everybody, and there was about 100 people, and this was a beta program, share the rather profound implications and impact it made on them. And one time I had them go to a certain kind of a business and try to figure out how in the world, what they did. I go, for example, when I go to a basketball game here at the Staples Center, I try to focus on how in the world do they turn that into a hockey rink? How in the world do they
think about that too?
and I want to know, because all those processes and procedures are very unique. And the more you focus on that stuff, the more it actuates, I think, those sensors in your brain that let you look at things from new and different focal points.
Totally. It's funny. When I go to those things, I always think the same thing. Like, man, tomorrow this is going to be a concert for Taylor Swift. That's crazy.
Yeah. Or maybe tonight.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing. Or it's going to be Frozen. How are they going to do that?
Let me ask you another question. If you were able to start a company from scratch, let's say, you're at the start of your career and you're able to, say, pick 4 people, living or non-living, to start a company with you right now from scratch, who would be on your bench? Who would be on your team?
Oh, Jesus. That's a tough question. Who do I really admire? I think if he were up to today's world, I would love to have David Ogilvy. I would love, again, most people won't know who Claude Hopkins or an Albert Lasker was, but in their heyday, they defined and created more business successes. It's ask me that on another interview because I'll do a
All right.
disservice
I'll
because
let
that's a
you.
profound question.
I
just
will
have
let
to
you think
about
about that one, and you will have to come back on the Leverage podcast again.
I
And
would
we'll go
like
over
that. That would be good. It's a great question. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I actually, typically I just ask questions on the fly, but for you, you're such a special guest. I actually
That's
sat
gracious.
back
Thank you.
and deeply thought about what are some things that I think would make this both an interesting conversation for the listeners, but also for you as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, I forgot to tell you. So one thing that on our last podcast that I was on with you, you had suggested something that I actually implemented, and it went
And I
very
hope it
well.
worked.
So you suggested to create a checklist for people to spark ideas of things that Leverage
Yes.
can help with.
Yes.
So we applied this at Joe Polish's Genius Network annual event. And instead of giving out a pen or a T-shirt or something, we invested in creating a checklist. We audited every business. There was about 300 people. We out of pocket, we paid for an audit. We identified kind of common touch points
Yes.
where every business kind of is failing. SEO, is your website mobile optimized? What's your social media? We identified, like 10 or 15 key vantage points to look at, and we gave a printout kind of report card on all of these things, A through F, on each of these touch points with comments on what they could do to.
Wow! And what happened?
We had 150 people pick theirs up, and we're blown away that we did it, and it was a huge success. So,
did it produce clients?
It produced clients. It produced more tasks out of the current clients. It's now going to be implemented during the onboarding in Genius Network, where we're going to do this for every new member, and we're going to start to roll this out and be integrated in the onboarding of other various groups.
So if you want to really have fun with it, take that to one dimension higher. Go to some of the members of Genius Network who have influence and impact over entrepreneurs and offer them the ability to extend that to some of their higher level, either members, subscribers. Yep. And I think you'll be very, very proud of that. And you also might want to put that out as a potential. See, if you have there's two ways to do it. One is the way you've done it, which is better, but very labor intense and cost intense. The other is a modification that is self-diagnostic, and you ascribe point systems, and maybe you have 5 gradations.
That's a good idea.
Of answer. That's what we do is we have one. Here's how we do it. We have one that is called "How Does Your Business Really Stack Up?" It has 87 questions. Each one has 5 different potential answers. Each answer has points, and at the end you tally the points, and it gives you different assessments from being terrible to under this to okay, but you could do more. And it's very self-revealing. And if you went to that, you could get millions of those out there, and it would be really pretty wonderful, wouldn't it?
Brilliant idea. I've gotten a lot out of this conversation. I'm going to implement that one. So thank you.
And I think you'll like it. And then you go to everybody, including your Forbes article, and say, we just created this. And if you got a real business and you're overwhelmed, or you don't think you can grow, or you're resource impaired, or you can't afford this, but it would tremendously, multiply your success, you ought to take this and see how many things you're misperceiving.
Love it. I'm going to do that.
Okay, cool.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time. Would you mind just spending a few minutes to share all the different programs that you offer? I feel like I'd be doing my audience a disservice if they didn't know all the different content or ways that they could get.
Oh, geez. I'll try. I probably won't remember them myself. In a descending order. I do private long-term advisory, which is this masterful thinking, and it's expensive, but it's one or two, detailed sessions a month for a period of time, a year normally, and that's my preferred. If it's big enough and has a lot of moving parts in the revenue system, a lot of ads they run, a lot of salespeople, distributors, leads, repeat clients, trade shows, franchisees, distributors, things like that, will entertain either full or modified performance based profit sharing. And we might add new revenue streams, products, services, distribution channels, access vehicles. We do quarterly for smaller companies, which are fun. We have fabulous, one of the best things we do, it's inexpensive or expensive. We have $25,000 a person, 3-day, it's called Breakthroughs, either in Palos Verdes or at the beach, because we usually do it at one of my homes, and it's 15, 20 people, and it's just total transformative strategy, marketing, business model, belief system, image, competitive advantage. We sell some programs. Currently, we've got one on referral mastery, one on, we call that capital equivalence. We're getting ready to start very small elite groups on Beyond Exponential, how to take your business profits. I've done beta programs on how to be a consultant, on how to build a power practice, on 9 million stuff on marketing. We did one once, we don't sell it, for ADD, ADHD entrepreneurs, trying to get them to see they're not aberrant people who are anomalies. They're quite there's quite a lot of you out there, and just understanding how to manage it. And then I've done a lot of verticals. I've done stuff in the real estate business, the martial arts business, the dental business, the legal business. Jesus, all kinds of things. But that's pretty much.
Well, I've had the honor of coming to one of your events, and it was spectacular. So if anyone, if you listening right now do have the opportunity to make one, I highly suggest it. And
it's nice. Thank you.
And Jay, I just wanted to thank you for your time today and for the friendship. And I hope to see you at another Bullseye event coming up.
Thank you.
And how can people find out more? Is it just go to the Abraham group, abraham.com?
You can go to abraham.com. Right now, it's going to alter because we're doing some adjustment. But if they're small, or if they just want to get familiar with us, there's an enormous amount of resources. There's a documentary about me, which is pretty cool. And not because I'm cool, it's just a cool documentary. I didn't do it. And there's a lot of cool stuff, but there's 3 or 4 books, full-length books that we give away without anything, to give it, to pay shipping and handling, but they're digital. And there's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of keynotes and Q&A, and Tony Robbins and I, and Damon John and I, and all kinds of things like that.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Jay. This was awesome.
Nick, you're a very impressive person, and I would say reciprocally that you offer a real ability as a catalyst to help almost any entrepreneur that feels that they are resource or expertise or growth restricted, to really break the shackles of that misperception. And I would say, because we use you, and we're very pleased with the outcome and the expanse you've given us as far as your services. So I'm going to do a non-compensated little ad for you, okay?
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Leverage Podcast from GetLeverage.com. Please let us know what you think. Rate and subscribe on iTunes. Leverage is an on-demand outsourcing platform that helps small business owners and entrepreneurs scale their business. We have experts that can help set up marketing and sales funnels, your email marketing, podcasts, social media creation, paid media, and much more. Grow your business overnight with a team of experts you can trust to deliver. Accomplish more. Visit getleverage.com.